And after that, my life really changed all of a sudden.
How long did that last?
Well, definitely for, more than 30 years.
So something led me for that long, made it so that it turned out this way for you now.
I sleep so much better.
By the way, that's how I imagine paradise on earth, yes. I can hardly believe that you're here. With me is a woman who, in 26 years, has written 26 books, who was already recognized for her writing skills as a young girl, who has hosted shows, who has modeled for Benetton, who has written plays and many other successful things. And besides that, you are also a mother of 5 children.
That's right.
Wow. And you have a date of birth that I haven't clarified yet.
Yes.
Is that true? Because on Wikipedia it actually says that your birthday is on the 21st or on March 22, 1973. A warm welcome to you here today, Alexa Hennig von Lange.
Thank you, Petra. I'm very happy to be here, and my birthday is on March 21st.
And how come it says there that it's unclear?
No one from Wikipedia has ever personally asked me when my birthday is. So apparently there are 2 opinions about that, but it's the 21st, okay?
So that's settled then. But then let's just keep going. I told you are award-winning in many ways. What was the nicest compliment you've ever received, the one you still remember?
So I can't remember word for word what the nicest compliment was, but the feedback I get from my readers that they can connect with my books, that they see themselves in my books, that the books are a kind of home for them where they can reflect on themselves, question themselves, where the question is asked, do we have to live like this or can we live differently? And that the books can create a kind of community. That's the most beautiful thing for me. Of course, it's not a closed community, but rather a community where people turn toward each other, where people are there for each other, basically in peace. Yes.
You just wrote a new book. So you write historical novels, you write trilogies, you write children's books, you write so many different things. As I've already mentioned, you've also written plays and now a non-fiction book. It's called Relaxed Vegan. And I got it from you in advance. And you know what happened to me? On Sunday afternoon I picked it up and then I really read through it. Nice. Everything you wrote. And do you know why? Because I felt at home.
Nice.
That was exactly the reason, and I found it so incredibly beautiful. And of course, this non-fiction book of yours connects us. Yes, and you told me on the phone that you couldn't enjoy it anymore. And then, yes, as luck would have it, you made a discovery, and in the end, that led you to create this cookbook. Would you like to talk about it?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, I need to give a bit of background for that.
With pleasure.
Because when I was a little girl, I used to cook a lot with my mother. That means my mother guided me. And at our home, we always cooked with very natural, minimally processed ingredients. The vegetables came from the market or from my parents' community garden plot. There was very little meat. On Sundays, yes, but then we would sometimes have a roast or roulade, but during the week, hardly any meat. And healthy eating was a big part of what we children learned. Vegetables and fruits contain a lot of vitamins. You need them to grow up healthy and to stay healthy. And at the same time, my mother radiated an incredible joy when cooking, cleaning vegetables and chopping them. It was like a kind of choreography that I was allowed to take part in, and I was able to learn how delicate the work of cooking is without any rush. Even though my mother, as a working mother of 3 children, really had very little time. But this moment of cooking connected us, and a lot of important things, at least important to me, were discussed during that time in the kitchen. And I always had a very close relationship with my mother. But at the moment when I grew older, when I said goodbye to my childhood and the world opened up for me, and I wanted to go out into the world, it was actually really frightening at times how big the world was, how unpredictable it was, and yeah, may I? Yes.
I just wanted to ask something. So you mean the time when puberty started? Yes, exactly. And then you just grew up, and exactly. And you were afraid of what was waiting for you outside because you felt very safe at home. And yes, absolutely.
And I would also say that there was a kind of rebellion against my parents' sensible way of thinking. And so I have, yeah, I would say I also tried to become aware of myself, to feel what was going on inside me. Who can I be in this world? And I always liked moving toward the edge. But at the same time,
Habe aber auch gleichzeitig das
I had the need to be able to control this new world or my life in some way. Of course, there were also relationships, first love, and so on, so that I started dieting, and at some point, this diet turned into anorexia. When I was 18 or 19 years old, I was admitted to a clinic because of my anorexia and such an eating disorder. Even if you eventually manage to recover from it, in the sense that you no longer feel the need to control yourself, your body, your life, or the world through starving? Doesn't it mean that the body has now gotten used to this extremely reduced food intake? That means long after I actually no longer had the urge to starve, I kept starving myself because I felt like I would immediately gain weight if I ate even a bite too much. And of course, at some point that became a state I got used to because I thought that's just how it is. I eat very little. It did make me sad that in front of my children and in the family, I was always the one who didn't eat pasta, who didn't eat potatoes, who always had very little on her plate.
That means you really went without enjoyment for a long time, even though enjoyment was such a huge part of your family life when you were a child. Absolutely. Enjoyment combined with love, absolutely. Yes, for sure. And how long did that go on?
So definitely for, yes, more than 30 years.
That long?
Well, it's a condition that of course, you get used to. At the same time, I have to say that, and I'm sure absolutely everyone who really holds themselves back knows this, not eating much, always being hungry, it means stress. So that means, and you're thinking the whole time, when can I eat the next bite? You kind of wander around. You put something small in your mouth, hoping that the hunger will go away, yeah? But this feeling of never having enough, never being satisfied, never being at peace, that stayed with me for a very, very long time. And then, Petra, I actually went to the organic store with my husband, the one we go to every day. And of course, we buy fruit and vegetables for the kids and for ourselves. And yes, shopping for the family. And I always bought the same things for myself and thought, well, I'll eat this and I'll eat that. I know these things. And behind me, I can't describe it any other way, there was this display stand with these cookbooks. Yes, and it really said, turn around, not a loud voice, but something made me. I turned around. And there was your intermittent fasting book, and I didn't know anything about intermittent fasting, nothing at all. There were other books there too, and I hadn't heard your name back then, and I walked over purposefully. I took this book, I opened it, it said, "Take me with you." I closed it and put it at the checkout. And my husband asked, "What do you have there?" I said, "I found such a beautiful book and I really have little time." And the last time I actually bought a cookbook was when I was 25 or 26, and never again after that. And I read through this cookbook, your intermittent fasting book, that very same evening, and the next day I started cooking according to it. And after that, my life really changed dramatically, and I am so, so grateful to you. So if I were alone, I would start crying right now, because it just changed my life so much. Because it brought so much beauty into our family, so much beauty into my life, so much beauty for my husband and me, so much freedom, contentment, peace, security, and exactly the sense of security that I knew from my childhood, because I made peace with my body and my mind. And I have been meditating for 25 years, and that has already brought me a lot of peace, but I was still missing the peace to be able to eat again without fear, and to know that nothing will happen, and nothing happened. And Petra, I eat 3 times a day now, really a large amount. And I have, yes, a large amount, and I haven't gained a single gram, actually quite the opposite at first. And
you can enjoy it, and now you can also, I think, and that's something really, really wonderful for me right now, because you can pass it on to your children again.
yes,
Because you couldn't do that before. I mean, in a situation where you always had to control yourself, you had much, much less concentration for what you were doing, because there was always this thought floating around, what am I allowed to do now? What am I not allowed to do? And now, because of that, you've gained a huge amount of freedom.
I've gained freedom because the aspect of eating is no longer an issue in that sense. That I'm starving, yes, that I'm depriving myself of something. What gives life, what heals, what brings peace, what gives health, what brings joy, what gives pleasure, what nourishes and satisfies me. And my children sit there, well, by now they've gotten used to it, but at first they sat there and said, "Mom, we're seeing you eat for the first time." Yes, and you don't have to have an eating disorder in the way that I had. You don't have to have been anorexic, but how many people don't give themselves what is good for them? And I lost this knowledge over the past 30 years. I considered food to be something deeply dangerous. I lost that sense, and through you I found my way back again. I was reminded of what my mother had taught us, what my father had taught us. I have to think of my father right now, when we used to be on vacation in Schleswig-Holstein, and my father would walk down a country lane, but that would take us too far. But there was a carrot lying on the ground, and my father picked up the carrot and took a bite. So I just want to say we learned that carrots are really great, and I had forgotten that. And how good they are for your body. I mean, I was able to learn all of that through you too. It
is what you're saying right now really touches me deeply, because you said what you're able to feel again. Because you're in touch with yourself, and because your life has become so much richer. So this freedom, this love, this ability to be in touch with yourself, I think if people could feel that again for themselves, how wonderful would this world become? That's also the reason why I always say, well, speaking for myself, that the plants actually give us this opportunity, that we can live a healthy life, that we don't have to harm anyone in any way, and that we can live in great, great peace because of it. Yes, and I long for it so much, and you described it so beautifully. I can't describe it as beautifully as you did. But this part, it should be hanging everywhere, and all young people should read it, as well as older people, because it's just true that nutrition has such incredible power. So 1,000 thanks for describing it that way. But I'm going to move on a little bit now because you said something earlier. You said you pushed yourself to the limits in your life. And now you also have 5 children. And when I hear that you pushed yourself to your limits while becoming an adult, probably even in your early adulthood, what do you mean by that? I'm just going to ask very directly now. Yes. Did you also have any experience with drugs? Yes.
Yes, well, I'm from Hanover. That might only be important for people who are also from Hanover. But back then, when I was 17 or 18, there was a very diverse youth culture in Hanover. And I belonged to this one group that really regretted not having been at Woodstock. I'm not that old yet, but we liked listening to rock music. Um, We liked to party. There were a lot of people who played in bands. And of course, we all smoked as much as we could. We drank alcohol. And, of course, but it was just part of that live fast, die young, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was definitely part of being a young person in Hanover for us. And that was, and it's nice that you're asking me that, because that was, of course, that's also part of growing up, feeling yourself. That was part of it for me. It contained a huge vitality, a creative power. That's why I don't want to undervalue that at all. What's much more interesting for me is when I look back now, that now with this way of eating that I already experienced as a child and have now integrated much more into my conscious knowledge, that this now holds absolute creative power for me. That it is healing, that it is beautiful, that it gives me peace, that it gives me space. So what I would have willingly said back then at 17, 18, 19, 20, like, oh, well, even if I die young, at least I've lived. Now, my feeling is how wonderful that I am allowed to live. Yes, how wonderful that I am allowed to feel this way. Also, in this sense of connectedness.
I wonder what led to things turning out this way for you now. Because you basically say what you needed back then when you were in your rebellious phase. It was alcohol, it was partying, it was drugs, smoking, and who knows what else there was. And you have this feeling, you do it, many young people, but also adults say that they turn to such drugs because because they want to feel themselves. Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what you're saying, that you feel yourself again. My question is, do you feel yourself again because you knew it through your mother?
That's a very interesting question. So I'll try to explain it very briefly. I hope I can do it well.
No, everything.
Everything's fine. I would say that I am thankfully from home, since we were read a lot ourselves, and listened to a lot of music. Always, we as children, we got a sense of what it feels like to be with ourselves, or that there is something beyond form, that there is something deeply still within us where we can always feel at home. And the older I got as a teenager, especially when I suddenly had more contact with the outside world, and I realized that you don't automatically get along with everyone right away. My first love was painful, and I didn't understand why it could hurt so much when you love each other. Why does it hurt so much? And my first reaction to it was, you could say, self-destruction, but maybe it was also a way of finding myself, right? It was an attempt to find something real in it again. And that was through this intense need to feel deeply connected to myself. And I do think that because I learned as a child that there is something there, it made it possible and easier for me to return to that place. And of course, also through my work as a writer, which is always about coming back to myself again and again at the same time. And that was the absolute sweetest thing for me. Yesterday, my 21-year-old son came home to us. And so when he lived with us at home recently, now he lives on his own. So he really liked to fry, deep fry, and eat burgers. And yesterday he came to us with his lovely girlfriend. And the first thing he says is, "Mom, do you know what we make for ourselves every day? Vegetables, vegetable casserole." And he brought 5 pots of herbs with him and told me about all the different vegetable dishes he makes. He sends me photos showing that he now bakes sourdough bread himself. So I do think so, yes. And of course, you get it from home and it makes things so much easier, even if you move far away from it. And I see that in myself, I see that in my son. Of course, you come back and it's so beautiful.
Yes, it's like I said earlier, your book is like coming home for me, and you write that again and again. I'm convinced that we all need that, this feeling of being at home, of arriving. So first of all, of course, within ourselves, but I think we can only truly arrive at home if there is a home, if we've also felt that. And that's why it's so wonderful that you, that Ada in Yes, give that, and that you also convey this in your books. For example, I read The Decorated Girls by you, or rather I listened to it as an audiobook. I was fascinated. I couldn't let go. There's a lot of that in there, a lot of that depth as well. Yes. And I just think it's amazing that you can achieve that with words, to express it like that, and that you also touch people's souls with it. So that makes me happy. That's what I can say about it right now. But there's another book by you. I haven't read it myself, but I saw the title and I found it quite exciting. That's a historical novel by you. You know which one I mean.
Yes, The Mad Woman.
The Mad Woman, yes. Why did you choose Johanna? Johanna the Mad Woman, that's how she was described.
Yes.
She lived around the year 1500.
Yes.
Yes, why did you write a book about her?
It's nice that you ask, because now we're coming back to my first love. Yes, because my first boyfriend gave me the book from Surkamp, Wahnsinnsfrauen. Because he was, I think, completely at a loss as to what else he could do with me. Because yes.
Wahnsinnsfrauen. I never really thought about what that could actually mean.
Right? Yes, I think, well, he also thought I was a bit crazy because I was, let's say, emotionally quite complex. And he gave that to me. And he said that I would definitely find myself in it. And I found Johanna the Mad in it. And it's about a princess who lived 500 years ago, the daughter of Isabella the Catholic, that queen who, well, Columbus, yes, sent on the sea route to discover India, and he actually discovered America. And this daughter, Johanna, was held captive for over 50 years by her son and her father. And you could say she rebelled against it. But the more I dealt with this female figure, the more I realized her enormous yes. 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 Tortured, yes. Endured, yes, and yes. But in the letters she wrote, you could also feel a great tenderness. Yes, in the letters she wrote, there was a great tenderness to be felt. And a great intelligence and wisdom. And yes, this outward image, or rather the idea people had of her, she was terribly betrayed by her husband, Philip the Handsome. You could say, well, that's just how it was back then. Yes, but that doesn't mean it wasn't still painful, because you long for connection, because deep down you want to connect with the other person. And yes, this female character really moved and touched me deeply, and that's how the book came about.
When I really put myself in her place, this woman was strong and suffered endlessly. Like, do you know how she died? You probably know.
Well, at some point I think there wasn't a specific reason, but at the end of her imprisonment, she just, probably died of physical weakness. And that's also interesting that you bring that up because while I'm writing, I go through all these emotions. And I wrote The Mad Woman before I started intermittent fasting and a vegan diet. That means it was the last book before I started with that. And I still remember how physically exhausted I was after I finished writing this book, which has, I don't know, 250, 300 pages. I spent half to three quarters of a year writing a book. I was excited, drained. And now I've written the next books, and now I've made it an absolute routine for myself to cook while I write. I get up from my desk, I go into the kitchen, I cook something for my husband and myself. I prepare the vegetables, I make the millet, and in the meantime I leave my characters at my desk and I get some space. I find peace again. I let the feeling subside for a short while.
Does that mean that before you found your balance again, you always had your novel characters with you the whole time? And now you manage it because you've created order for yourself? Because that's something really important to me. For me, order means health. Illness is associated with chaos. And you've created order and can leave your characters at your desk, and then you can be Alexa again. So you can be yourself, and you weren't before.
Yes, well, it's a little different. I mean, I generally learn to keep things very tidy at home. Yes, sorry, I always have to think of my father.
When you see me or what?
No, it was about order because my father, and I think I got that from him that things are in order. Yes, so that means even while I was writing, I would get up from my desk, make the children's beds, or I would tidy something up. And that's how I found myself again back to calmness, to clarity. But now there's a difference. Because I cook, I have something nourishing. I feel nourished and I feel grounded in a different way, and especially at the end of the cooking process. And that's what's so great about your recipes, that I don't have to spend hours in the kitchen. When I started cooking with your books, so this half hour that I spend cooking, and then I tell my husband the food is ready and we can enjoy it. We're not quite there yet with the chewing, but that will come too.
Take it easy, take it easy.
Yes, but I nourish myself, I go to my desk and I feel full again, and that was what I was missing. So even when I made the beds, and even when I always saw my daddy in the background saying, Alexa, you made the bed so nicely, still that nourishing aspect wasn't there because I was hungry. And now I'm not hungry anymore, and now this strength is there, just like what my characters in the novel also experience. Yes, I don't want to say it's only through suffering, but this work is highly emotional. It's highly emotional what the characters experience, and that I have the strength for it. And that's, I think that contributed to it again. And you can feel that in the books, that they are even more substantial, more lively. Yes, that's it.
It's actually amazing. I just said, I thought, when you said that you feel nourished, I thought you meant you cook for your husband, for your children. That means you also nourish others, yes. So this whole big mother role, I was just thinking about One of the Mad again, because there is still a bit of a discrepancy in our society right now. That would definitely be another topic we could talk about. But maybe you actually also nourish your characters so that they can be more honest with you. Because when you are nourished, you are in harmony with yourself, you are at peace, and then you can really be who you are. And maybe that's why now your way of dealing with your characters actually becomes even more lively. Yes.
It's more tender. It's I can give them more space. They can be more fully themselves, no matter what they're like, whether they're good or whether they're bad. But I would say that my approach to the person opposite me, and those are my characters in the books, of course, too, that it has become even more trusting, even more loving, even more devoted.
You don't just have characters who are loving and good in your novels. You also have quite a few negative characters that you describe, of course. Are you also more devoted and loving with them?
Absolutely, because I am in these characters. And I would also say that they are not exclusively negative; they are contradictory, and yes, this contradiction, I can allow that. And I'm curious to see how the characters will change, basically. So that means I can follow these characters well.
You are truly one of the great writers of your generation, and it's actually the first time we're seeing each other. And when I look at you and when I hear you speak, I can only say I understand it with every fiber of my body and my being, why that is. And I truly wish that you can write many, many more things, but we're not done yet. Yes, just because I'm saying this now. Yes, thank you. But I'm touched again. So right now it's a very, very intense conversation. And for that, I'm already really, really grateful to you in advance.
Thank you.
Alexa, you're a mother of 5 children, but you only have 3 at home because the other 2, as you already mentioned, are 21 and 25. They're already grown up, they're already out of the house. But still, you do so much, and like I said, you also cook and prepare everything. And do you manage to do all of that? Do you manage to juggle all of that, or is the hat sometimes too big?
It's a lot, definitely. Of course, that's where my upbringing comes in handy again. Yes, my mother also worked. There were children as well, and they tried to make sure we children were well taken care of. At the same time, I have a really, really wonderful husband who is just as much at home. We both work at home. My husband writes, I write. We take care of the children.
You both sit in the same room, is that right?
Yes, we sit in the same room, each in our own world. And of course, from time to time, we also talk about what we're writing. We read the text. My husband reads my books first, and we take care of the children together. And so I'm not alone with everything. We share it, and of course that's a huge relief. At the same time, and that's basically also something I had to learn, that cooking, I said earlier that it takes half an hour with your recipes, but that's still time I have to make available. That means I make a nice porridge in the morning, cook something nice for lunch, and after 8 hours I cook something nice again, or make a salad or something like that.
Do your children actually help now the way you used to help your mother?
My children really enjoy cooking, sometimes to my dismay, I have to say, because, of course, when I cook alone, it's faster and I clean up at the same time. And of course, my children's interest in cooking means that everything slows down at first. But at the same time, you can really notice that they're getting more skillful with their hands and coming up with their own ideas. And every now and then it happens that my husband and I come home, and suddenly our 12-year-old is cooking with his 12-year-old friends. And they're making Kaiserschmarrn or something like that. So, yeah, of course, their independence is increasing.
But back to what you said, because you mentioned it always takes half an hour.
Half an hour. Exactly. So that means it's a decision. It means that during this time I can't work or clean up. I'm busy with something I used to save time on, and now you could say, well, I can't afford to also make something proper to eat 2 or 3 times a day. At the same time, I also see that it brings an enormous amount of strength and calm, which in turn soothes everything else, gives space to other activities, and creates concentration. And in that sense, I can say I've actually become almost more productive since I started doing it this way, stronger. And the most important thing is it's also related to that now. I sleep so much better. I mean, I'm really sorry. It sounds like I'm enlightened by intermittent fasting, but it's actually true. I sleep like a baby. Since I started intermittent fasting, I used to have such sleep problems because of the kids, and a lot of parents, especially mothers, know this, getting up to 7 times a night. That feeling of always having something left to do. And you mentioned it in the first intermittent fasting book I read. That sleep becomes deeper and calmer. You explained it, and I really took it in and said, okay, now I'm going to sleep well. And after 2 weeks, I was sleeping better. Now I've been doing this for a few years, and at first, I didn't lie down with so much trust. And then I thought, will it be like this again tonight? But now I don't think about it anymore. I lie down, I give my husband a kiss, I turn over, and I fall asleep.
That's a great gift. Sleeping well, I think we all know, is one of the greatest gifts, to be able to do what we wish for the next day, to accomplish what we want to accomplish. You know, you mentioned earlier that you've been meditating for 25 years, and what came to my mind was the way you described how you prepare food. I thought, do you actually know? You probably do. That's a meditative meditation, cooking, what you do there.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that means you have an extra hour and a half of meditation. And when you know, and now there's so much science about it, about everything that happens as a result, and especially when you have these valuable plant-based foods. That's why I always call everything that comes from plants food. And for things that are processed and have nothing to do with plants at all, or something like that. Artificially produced things are just foodstuffs to me, though I'm not sure what they're meant to nourish, maybe just fat cells. But otherwise, the other things are actually, for me, those are foods, means for living. And this connection with calmness, with meditation, my goodness, how beautiful it is, especially this food when you cook it with so much love. Do you even know what I mean? What you give when you pass it on, not just to yourself, but also to your loved ones. I believe in that all this energy, that we give it to you.
Yes, well, I hope so, but that's how I feel for myself. I just have to think of the turmeric root right now, which I also got to know through you. Yes, we had a lot of beetroot at home, but that sounds strange. But when I cut the beetroot, I could just put on gloves, but I think it's so great. Yes, that my hands are red for a short while, that my hands are yellow for a short while. So, because it shows what kind of power is behind it, I cut a vegetable and my hands are red. Yes, I always find that amazing.
Exactly, and you feel that same power in your body, and that's a good thing. But now, I just have to come back to the topic of drugs for a moment. Yes. Yes, it also has something to do with that, because we always have a lot of young people around us, and of course that's a topic as well. And we also have 2 sons, and everything is fine. But nevertheless, I always say you don't really need drugs. But you are all adults, all of you who are there. You have to decide for yourselves whether you want to try it or not. What about your children, your grown-up children? So they're 21 now. Do you know if they've tried this? Is it okay for you? Do you worry about it?
Of course, I've thought about it. Of course, I worry about it. It already starts with energy drinks. I mean, there are things like that. I can relate to that. Because we have children in every age group, I can really see what appeals to each age group in particular, or even with sweets. Yeah, well, There are a lot of things out there that are being offered which our children, just like all other children, find extremely exciting. Technical devices and so on and so forth. Yes, I think I had a certain advantage as a mother who has used drugs herself, that I had certain stories in store that I could tell my children. And I think they were also impressive in a way that made my children think twice about whether that was really right for them. Although I would never say, I don't see it morally when it comes to drugs. I see it very much from a health perspective. And of course, I used to see the posters that said, say no to drugs. And club sports are the best. Yeah, that didn't appeal to me at all. It just didn't speak to me. But at some point, I happened to get my hands on an English magazine. It was War's Face magazine. There was something about the long-term effects of drug use, and that immediately resonated with me. And I got such a fright and thought, why had no one told me before that this could possibly have long-term effects? Now, I'm basically a very sensitive person. That means I didn't have to take drugs to get high. I just had to look at them, and they already had a huge effect on me. But that's basically what I passed on to my children. I told them what it does to the brain, but without scaring them, just in a very informative way. And of course, the best moments from my life. So, all those stories that shouldn't have happened, which are, of course, funny in hindsight, but some of them were so borderline that I said, I'm glad I made it out of there in one piece. If my kids do that now, they won't tell their mom, but my son is making a vegetable casserole now, so there's that.
I think even if they really tried it out, it would be fine too. Because I just believe that there's so much stability and substance there that they would definitely find their way out again. And what's really nice is that also through this life, I mean this healthy life, what you're showing them now also shows that they can make everything right again if they ever did something not so great themselves. It's simple. I find this ability that we can bring ourselves back into the healing process, I find that absolutely fascinating. And I think everyone should know that. Everyone really should.
Yes, well, what I actually didn't notice right away because of the drugs, but I realized it afterwards, that of course it also points to something else. And that's probably why you end up taking drugs, because they point to a different state of consciousness. They suggest that you can be in a state that makes you happy, that makes you free, in the sense that you are full of trust, that you know, have a deep knowledge, everything is all right. And then the effect of the drug wears off again and the down follows. And then you really have to work your way out of it to somehow reach that state again that you had with the drug. And that's how addiction happens. And the realization that you can create this wonderful state where everything is okay by yourself. Of course, that isn't just given to you. You have to do something for it, and that takes time again. Because you have to get yourself there and work on being able to maintain that state for longer and longer. But how nice is it to realize that you're doing something good for your health? And maybe I also thought that it's my responsibility as a mother to at least show my children that you can be happy, that you can be full of confidence. And that doesn't mean that I'm always happy, that I'm always full of confidence, but that I work on increasing this feeling a little bit every day. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't.
But I think that's just a normal part of our lives. Because if we were only happy, we wouldn't even know what it means to be happy, since it would be a permanent state. That's why these ups and downs are absolutely necessary, so that we can feel the beautiful moments again. And that's also what I keep experiencing myself. And now I've heard it from you as well, and also from many people I've met, that they have this feeling of being happy, happiness simply from this purity, which is also within us, that you can reach that state without drugs. And it's true, they have long-term effects. And because of that, yes, we should all tell our children that, and then they can decide for themselves. But also know that if it's not too bad, everything can be fixed again. So thank you for sharing this experience with us now, for sharing it with me. So now there's another part in this podcast. There's a little box there. I'd like to ask you to take this box and open it. And that you take a look at what's inside. And maybe if you pick something up, you could just tell us what you might associate with it. That's good. So
Let's take a look. It's quite interesting. Whew. So now I'll take out this young friend here first. And fortunately, it already says Berlin wedding. So, of course, I associate that with my second home by now. I've been living in Berlin for almost 30 years. And I am 50 years old, turning 51 now. As we know, it's 2021, 2020 March. And yes, that's what I associate with my home.
yes, nice. So a bit of home here as well. So very nice. What else is in there?
Oh, yes, here's a very beautiful book. This is by Ewald Ahrens, Der große Sommer. He is a very, very dear colleague of mine, Ewald Ahrens, with whom I occasionally organize readings. And I like him very much. And he also writes a lot about, what he writes is also always inspired by family, his siblings. His relationship with his siblings comes up again and again, and yeah.
And that's why you do readings together, because you...
Why? It basically just happened that way because we like each other and we can read well together and talk well together. And when we do these readings, we talk a lot about our writing, how our books come to be, what the starting points are, and yeah.
And can you find on the internet when you do your reading tours and when you do joint reading tours?
Yes, well, we are both with Dumont Verlag and they also have an event calendar. Ewald and I just had a wonderful reading in my hometown, Hanover, and for now there won't be any joint ones. But separately, we both go on reading tours again and again.
Yes, so if anyone is interested, definitely check it out there. That was number 2.
Thank you. So, oh dear.
It turned out big. I actually wanted it to be smaller.
But the little Hummel Bommel, is Bommel's name just courage?
It actually has more to do with the book format, if I understood that correctly. Yes?
Yes, well, maybe that's what you mean. I used to, yes. Yes, that's what I meant. Very nice. When I started writing, I used to... Since I was only about 8 years old, of course, I couldn't write huge novels, so I always wrote stories in pixie book format. And it was always about children who only had a cheese sandwich left in their bag, got lost, were alone in the woods, and didn't know how to get home. And the cheese sandwich was basically what symbolized home. So they had their home with them, but were still looking for a way to get back. Because the parents were the ones who told them who they are and who they can be in this world. And now these children were standing alone in the forest and had to figure out for themselves who they are so they could find their way back home.
You wrote that. How old were you?
Well, that's already analyzing it. Yes.
I understand, but still.
Yes, so the moment I was able to write, I sent these children off. There was always this feeling, who can I be in this world? And that's when we've just been writing and talking about drugs, it's the question, who can I be in this world? When I write about Johanna the Mad, who can I be in this world? That's the question. what is the world like and who am I in it, and do I determine the world or does the world determine me?
That's an extremely, extremely important question, and your answer, I think, is very clear to you, right? Isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So, of course, it sounds very egocentric when I say I determine the world, yes, but I can determine the way I look at the world. And I can decide whether it's a peaceful perspective. And the beautiful thing is that when you have a peaceful perspective on the world transforms and becomes just as peaceful. And of course, I can't look beyond national borders, even though I would really like to. Yes, but if I can manage my own area, sometimes I succeed more, sometimes less. But that's what I really miss a lot. And what brings me a lot of joy.
And when many people are really nourished by that, by seeing it that way, that they can actually shape their world for themselves to a large extent, then it would be so wonderful. It would be even more beautiful. So because in my little world, I also try to do that, to make it so that it's simply beautiful, that it's peaceful. And if we all do it like you do, and then also express it in your books. Yes, it's all going in the direction that life is beautiful or that it can be beautiful. Of course, there are always setbacks that we have to recognize and learn to live with. Absolutely. And also to find solutions for them. Absolutely. It's probably about finding those solutions then.
Exactly. So it's really not about saying there are no challenges in my life, there are no difficulties in my life. In my life, my parents don't suddenly call because my father had a heart attack. Yes, all of that happens, that we have to jump in the car, drive straight to Hanover, go to my dad who's in the emergency room, and all of that happens. And that's meaningful. There are challenges, but also I'm sorry that I keep turning this into something positive, but that's how I feel about it. There are moments when we suddenly come together as a family. My older daughter comes and says, I'll take care of the little ones. My husband says, I'll drive you to dad. My husband has a close relationship with my father. We go to my mother, and my mother says, I can finally go to the organic store with you and buy myself an endive since dad wouldn't pay for it. Still, there is so much sweetness in this tragedy. And I'm in touch with my siblings, and we're thinking about what we should do together now. And yeah, and then the next thing happens, and the next, and the next. And I often face the question, how will I manage this? How will we handle it together? And who will we be once we've made it through?
I think that if we become a little bit more of a we, that's how I see it. So for me, because that's what you're describing, it's just normal life, the kind you experience too, like everyone else. It just has to do with how you deal with it, yes. And so I think you can also really learn a lot from how you deal with it. For example, if something has affected you deeply, and if you maybe find yourself in it a little bit, yes, how nice is that? Because sometimes it's conversations, or very often, for me, it's very often conversations that help me move forward in some way. Because when we're alone, it's always the same circle, but then getting something from the outside, from our loved ones, that helps us grow, helps us become more confident, and also helps us handle situations like this better. Yes, to cope with it, because sometimes there are moments in life that are not easy at all.
Yes, that's how it is. And I think when you have time for yourself every now and then, because of my work, I'm often by myself or with my husband. But when we talk to other people, you can really see what other people long for. And just recently, because of my cookbook, I cooked together with a few very lovely women whom I didn't even know in my kitchen because we wanted to try out recipes in Paris. And it immediately became very political. And it was so wonderful how these women sat at the table. We cut yellow carrots together and we talked about it. Why knowledge about healthy nutrition isn't taught in schools, why organic food isn't subsidized. Then there were pros and cons, whether eating organic food or eating less meat is a sacrifice or a benefit. And well, it was so enriching to actually hear what others think and about that. Then realizing again that the desires are actually very similar. And then you really start to wonder, what would that actually be? Like you just said, what kind of beautiful world would that be?
It would just be beautiful. By the way, that's how I imagine paradise on earth. Yes, yes, really, yes. But maybe we're getting a little bit closer to all of this with our being. I think...
You have one more thing. Yes, I still have one more thing. One thing, opinion, one thing that reminds me of God, Petra, that wasn't necessary right now. So, yes, those are just the challenges and the fantastic reasons to live. That didn't have to happen.
Do you have any idea what's in there yet?
That's gute Zeiten, schlechte Zeiten in there. And of course, that's referring to the fact that I once worked on the writing team for gute Zeiten, schlechte Zeiten when I was in my early 20s. And I have to say...
Only on the writing team?
Yes, I didn't act in it. Ah, so you weren't that pretty after all. Okay. No, I co-wrote, and together we came up with the stories that were supposed to happen in the episodes. Of course, everyone knows this wonderful theme. And I have to say that I'm very grateful for that time, which was quite challenging because we worked together as a team 5 days a week and very quickly had to come up with and write the new episodes. But I also learned structure there again, because the principle of how this series is built, how these storylines are intertwined, follows a system. And learning this system was extremely interesting for me because, of course, you can rely on it. And I still can to this day. I can rely on it, which doesn't mean that I write like the series, but that you can create a system for yourself that supports you and brings order. And I thought that was really great. And among other things, I had great colleagues there who were very imaginative, who could create things very quickly and also discard them just as quickly. And I also learned that I can let go of something, that I don't have to cling stubbornly to an idea. And that I don't have to hold on tightly to what I imagine, but if an argument comes up that shows me there's another solution, I can let go of my idea.
Thank you very much, dear Alexa. Would you like to put it back, or you can also, yes.
So thank you very much as well for these wonderful objects that have led me into the depths of my existence.
Yes, but to the heights as well, yes, to the heights as well. You already said earlier that you are 50. Is getting older a topic for you? No.
Well, no. No, really not. So why not? Well, because basically I'm really curious about what's coming. And because I have this goal, which goal? To become more conscious is why I'm basically looking forward to the time ahead of me. Because I think, wow, maybe I can be even more conscious. When I'm 60, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, when I'm 90, I plan to live to be 106 years old. Well, I don't know if I'll make it, but that's also a goal. So I'm really curious, about what will come and, of course, whether the rest of the world will go along with my wish. But no, I mean, physically, I feel much stronger than I did when I was 40. And in that respect, I don't think much about my age.
Do you exercise?
Yes, I do yoga. And I also do a bit of cardio here and there. And then, of course, I do the Liebsche exercise, yes. So, like that. Which exercise do you do?
The shoulder opener and so on.
Yeah, well, we have some really sweet people around the corner who have their little Liebsche practice there, and I go there from time to time. And how nice.
Yes. Yes, I'll tell Roland about that. He'll be really happy because especially for us who write so much and sit at our desks, really for everyone who sits and writes so much, this chest opener, yes, my goodness, it's just so easy. You can do it anywhere, anytime.
Every now and then, yes, I stand in some corner of the room or lie on the floor. Yes, I really enjoy doing that too.
Then your future is secure. Secured in the sense that you, and I think that's really amazing, that you're simply looking forward to it, and you'll see that a lot of what you've said, what you expect, will actually come true. And it's good to really be open-minded about it, and you definitely are. Definitely, that's amazing. And maybe, I mean, I also want to get pretty old, and now I'm a bit older than you. I was going to say, maybe we can manage to see each other from time to time and watch how we grow older together.
Yes, that would be the most wonderful thing for me.
Yes, then let's make that our goal.
Yes, very gladly, Petra. How lovely.
It was just so wonderful. And now, dear Alexa, let's move on to our role swap. Yes, so I would now simply like to offer to take over the moderation. I'm here, you can ask me whether I can answer everything, we'll see. But just go ahead and ask.
Yes, actually, I really enjoy doing that. Actually, I have a few questions, but basically that's also because you've been with me for so long now through your books. That means, of course, I've read a lot about you and have already been able to answer many questions for myself beforehand. But what interests me is on the level of nutrition. And I have the feeling, even though I've already dealt with it a lot, that I still have a few questions. And first I ask myself those, or I actually asked myself the question when I started with plant-based eating, with intermittent fasting, is it possible that I can really heal myself with it? That means, for example, if I have eaten meat for a long time, red meat, which is now...
BHO also warns against.
Warns, exactly. And I also heard that, if I'm saying this correctly, that consumption also affects the DNA. Is that right, would you say?
There are changes, but, well, I already know what you want to ask, but go ahead and ask.
Exactly. And can I, so to speak, how I used to eat before, can I heal that through a plant-based diet? Or has that basically already happened and now, fortunately, I'm starting with the other diet?
Not at all. You can really make everything right again. So the incredible power of nutrition is just amazing. It's very, very powerful if it's the right one. And maybe you've already heard of sirtuins.
Have you?
Of course you have. I've already written about it too. And they're also kind of casually referred to as anti-aging genes. They're produced first when we don't eat anything, and they're produced like much more when we eat only plant-based foods. And these sirtuins actually have the ability to repair changes in the cell nucleus. That's what's so amazing. That actually happens during intermittent fasting as well. You get repairs all the way into the cell nucleus.
And would you say that intermittent fasting is the more important aspect, or the plant-based aspect, or both? Equally?
Well, there are still people who believe they need meat in order to survive at all. I don't share that opinion, as you know, but if these people could at least do intermittent fasting, that would already be half the battle, definitely, because it's this chance for our body to regenerate, to truly heal. That's thanks to this wonderful autophagy process that can take place during fasting periods. And that's why, of course, you have much more energy, much more strength if you also eat a plant-based diet. So a whole food plant-based diet. But even just doing that alone, you're already doing something good for yourself. And that's why it's so incredible how much more powerful these two components are together. So if on one hand you practice intermittent fasting and on the other hand you eat a whole food plant-based diet, you don't have to be 100%. I thought it was adorable when you wrote you still sometimes eat camembert.
Yes, that's my dad again. Yes.
But everything is fine too. And that doesn't erase what you did before. I think that's really important too. So for me, that's the best path to health and back to health again. Intermittent fasting plus whole food plant-based.
But why is it, if it's so wonderful and I can testify to it myself, first of all, by how I feel? How is it then that this is still a diet that is often assumed to be about deprivation? Meaning that it doesn't mean enjoyment, that it means you have to go without. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I think the answer is relatively simple because most of us are used to something different. I think one reason why this diet of mine appealed to you so much is because you have already experienced exactly that at its core. But for most people here in our culture, especially in the 1 or 2 generations before us, eating meat was just the norm. Drinking milk, eating sugar, all of that was presented as something very special, as something valuable. And the mother would always honestly give the child yogurt, little yogurts with cute little dwarfs on them. And she said, this is so healthy and you have to eat this every day because it will help you grow. It will give you strong bones. And exactly what your mother did with you by doing that. She always said why it was good. Advertises it, yes, by involving parents. Back then, so strongly, for them to think that what they did is so important for health. And on top of that, think about it when your mom told you need meat, you need dairy products, you need yogurt, you need fish, and you also need eggs. If she said that and made sure of it, and then suddenly you hear something different, then it's also like you can't trust a part of your mother anymore. And I think that's really hard for us. So suddenly saying, what did my mother do? If you manage to say, hey, she didn't know any better, she did it out of love, but back then it was just a different time, or today it's still a different time, then it can really work out well for you. And I do notice that because I know it myself too, that a lot of people say, what, I have to give something up. And there are also people who actually say, well, then I just have to die earlier. That doesn't bother me either. But I just know how it is when you get sick and then suddenly the questions come up, what can I do now? Even when sick, there's still much we can do. And I just find it so wonderful that with very simple means which are available to everyone, we can do so much.
You have, and I already asked you about this once because I didn't quite understand it, that during the fasting period with intermittent fasting, the healthy cells go into a deep sleep.
Not in a deep sleep, I'll explain soon.
Yes. So I understood it, and the tumor cells become very active. And now I tell myself, then I'd rather not fast. Yes, because if my healthy cells, which are actually supposed to fight the cancer cells, fall into a kind of lethargy while the cancer cells become cheerfully active, then that's actually rather dangerous.
No, so they're not in a deep sleep. What happens with the cells is actually what you want with intermittent fasting. The cells are then able to contract and take care of themselves. During that time, they actually repair everything that might not be working optimally anymore. Whereas the cancer cells, for example, they're completely chaotic. They take whatever they want and are always shouting, "Here I am." And that's why it's been observed that at the moment when people with cancer are treated with chemotherapy, first of all, the chemotherapy is much more effective than if they're not in this fasting state, if the person isn't in this fasting mode. Because the cells, that's how I've always described it. Or, well, I also have an image for that. They kind of go into a protective crouch, they sort of gather into themselves, and the cancer cells, they scream. And of course, that's when they're much more affected by the chemotherapy. And that's why you need much less, and it's much more effective. And when you're dealing with the illness, and that's just, well, that's because I've been practicing for such a long time. I've observed how people who are already suffering from this illness have healed themselves, really healed themselves. And I just found that so fascinating. And
Through these fasting periods, would you say that means?
And through good nutrition, yes.
Okay, but if you are already sick with the disease and haven't started chemotherapy yet, do the cancer cells get starved during this fasting period?
Yes, they also get much less. They simply don't have it anymore. They don't have all the things they usually get. There's nothing there. And I also imagine that they fight each other. Then, of course, they have to fight among themselves. Yes, right.
Yes.
Sure. Whereas the others, they're just satisfied and say, and during that time they get active. Yes, they build up their strength. Because you shouldn't forget our healthy cells, they're trained so that they can see again. They see what's in the body where something isn't right, and they recognize, our immune cells recognize cancer cells. And if they're healthy because they've had the chance to recover, then the cancer cells have far fewer opportunities to spread. Instead, they keep getting reduced more and more, and that's really good.
And do I really need those 16 hours for that? For example, I always try to eat between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. So I manage that pretty well. But now, like today, for example, when we're traveling from Berlin to Bad Homburg, then we have breakfast at 8. So now I have 15 hours, for example. So is that, or do I really have to stick to the 16 hours with intermittent fasting? Yes.
So it's like we assume that the autophagy process really still starts after 12 hours. And that means the healing process begins. So you have a healing process that lasts 2 hours. If you fast for 14 hours, you have a healing process of 3 hours at 15 hours, and at 16 hours it's 4 hours. But you are healing through this process. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have it in this form. Yes. It's that simple. And again, even if, for example, you don't reach your 13 or 14 hours at all, you still did everything you did before. And that's a good thing. And that has already stabilized your cells, made them strong and powerful so that they can resume their healthy function. Alexa, our body's own intelligence, our AI. I always think that's such a nice play on words. It is so incredibly smart. We should just give it the space to be able to show that. Yes.
I'm often asked, do you also raise your children on a vegan diet? And I'm still being cautious about that. Well, first of all, of course, because the kids eat at home and also at school. They're at friends' houses, they're at sports, they come home later. So I feel like I can't be that strict about it. Of course, they get their fruit, their vegetables, and whatever else, but they also have an appetite for a sausage. What do you think about a child's body and a vegan diet?
As I said, we also have 2 sons. They're a bit older now. They'll be 33 and 35 this year. And when they were at home, they always ate what we had. When they were out, we always said, you can eat whatever you want. It was never an issue. At some point, they said there was a time when they really only did what we did at home. Then they started to branch out. And today I think, well, my sons are not vegans. Roland is, yes. Also, he is 95% vegan. I think that's perfectly fine. And well, I am, yes, I really try to be vegan, but my goodness, even then, if I'm invited somewhere and there's an egg in something, I wouldn't not eat it just because of that. So that's all way too dogmatic for me, yes. And if the children, if their basic diet is solid, is healthy, and they also have a home, I think there's nothing more you can really give them. And I think it would be really, really disastrous if dogmatism were to ruin all of that. Yes.
But that, I feel like that's a kind of confusion anyway. That means when you say I eat vegan, that's not an ideology, but rather a way of life, which is, yes, maybe also more playful, or that doesn't require any special, let's say, fuss from other people. So my friends know that we eat vegan. And fortunately, they've stopped asking, should we also cook something vegan when you come over? Because they've realized by now, well, if there's, I don't know, lasagna, my husband is happy anyway. And it's fine for me too, yeah. So it's not like veganism doesn't automatically mean there's going to be a lecture.
So it's not about you going around as an activist. That's a completely different form of veganism. Yeah. So for me, it's primarily about health. Of course, it's also about climate protection. Of course, it's also about ethical aspects. All of that is true, but I think we need to approach it gently. And you also wrote in your book, and I found that really, really wonderful. You said that people are always afraid they have to give something up and that it would get so boring. My goodness, there are so many kinds, so many different colors of vegetables, salads, herbs, fruits, nuts, and whole grains, and who knows what else. It's incredible. We should be able to just show people that, to offer it to them. They should be able to try it out. I think there's still a bit of a way to go, but for me, the path is already becoming clear. That more and more people are taking that path, because you can see it here in Germany, and I think you can see it all over the world.
Yes. Oh, that's nice.
Alexa, I really, really, really enjoyed being with you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I just want to thank you for coming, for making the long trip from Berlin. You're very welcome. Yes.
Thank you for the invitation. I was really, really, really happy. Thank you so, so, so much.
You're very welcome, and have a safe trip back.
Thank you.
We'll see each other again.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.